Poor couple with 11 children inherited a rusty trailer. But the maps they found there changed everything. Jennifer Wilson looked at the notary's letter with trembling hands as her 11 children ran through the cramped house. Uncle George had passed away and left as their only inheritance an abandoned trailer in a small town lost in the Kentucky countryside. It was when the tow truck parked in front of the house that she understood what they had really inherited. Robert, her husband, went out to receive what seemed to be a piece of scrap metal on wheels. The trailer was covered in rust, with holes in the sides, and a musty smell you could sense from the sidewalk. "Mum, what is that?" asked Emily Grace, the 16-year-old eldest daughter, holding little Lily, who was just 3 years old, in her arms. "It's our inheritance, dear," replied Jennifer, trying to hide the disappointment in her voice. The neighbors gathered on the sidewalk to watch the spectacle. Mrs. Johnson, the neighborhood gossip, didn't waste any time. "Look at what's left of Crazy George. I always said he was no good." Robert signed the delivery papers without being able to hide his shame. He worked as a construction worker when he could find jobs, but times were tough. Jennifer cleaned houses for families, but the money barely covered rent and basic food. "Dad, the lady from the real estate agency called again," said Peter, 14, handing the old cell phone to Robert. The conversation was brief and tense. They had 15 days to pay 3 months of overdue rent, or they would be evicted from the house. Jennifer felt her chest tighten. Where would they put 11 children? "Robert, let's take a proper look at this trailer," she said, trying to stay calm. "Maybe there's something useful." The family gathered around the rusty trailer. Michael and Gabriel, the 12-year-old twins, were the first to climb in. The musty smell was unbearable, but there was something else inside. "Mom, there are some old papers under this loose floorboard," shouted Michael, trying to lift a plank that gave way under his feet. Jennifer carefully entered the trailer. The roof had leaks, the walls were stained with dampness, but when Michael managed to lift the plank, they found a package wrapped in plastic. "What could Uncle have hidden here?" murmured Robert, carefully picking up the bundle. Inside were old maps, yellowed with time, with strange markings made in red pen. Some sheets looked like official documents, others were hand-drawn sketches of land and properties. "Look here, Robert," said Jennifer, pointing to one of the markings. "Isn't this the land where the old cooperative used to be?" Robert examined the paper more closely. The children gathered around, curious. Haley, 10 years old, held one of the white kittens that had appeared in the neighborhood in her arms. John, 8 years old, had another feline in his arms. "Mum, Grandpa George's name is here underneath," said Emily Grace, struggling to read the old handwriting. "And there's a date. 1987, added Peter. Jennifer felt something strange in her stomach. She vaguely remembered the stories her mother told about Uncle George. He always said he had been cheated, that his lands had been stolen. "Robert, let's take these papers to someone who can understand them better," she suggested. But Robert was worried about more immediate problems. The homeowner had threatened to call the police if they didn't pay by the end of the week. "Jennifer, this might just be old paper. Our priority now is to find a place to live." That night, after putting the children to sleep spread out across the 2 cramped bedrooms, Jennifer kept examining the maps under the dim kitchen light. There was something about those drawings that bothered her, as if they held an important secret. The next day, while Robert went out looking for work, Jennifer took Emily Grace and Peter to the public library. The librarian, Mrs. Miller, was known for knowing the history of the whole town. "Mrs. Miller, did you know my Uncle George Wilson?" asked Jennifer, showing the maps. The woman with graying hair put on her glasses and examined the papers with growing interest. "Good heavens, Jennifer, where did you find these?" "They were hidden in the trailer he left us. Why did something happen?" Mrs. Miller looked around as if wanting to make sure no one was listening. "Your uncle had many fights with Richard Thompson over these lands. Richard owns the biggest hardware store in town now, but back then he was just a clever merchant." "And what happened?" wanted to know Emily Grace. "Your uncle claimed Richard had taken the land irregularly, using fake paperwork, but nobody believed him because Richard had influence at the city hall." Jennifer felt her heart race. If the maps proved her uncle was right, maybe there was a chance to recover something. "Mrs. Miller, do you know where I can find an attorney who understands these matters?" "There's Attorney Elliott. He retired last year, but still takes on some special cases. He lives on Blossom Street, number 47. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, who are just starting out. Now continuing. Jennifer left the library with a mix of hope and fear. If there really was a chance to prove her uncle had been cheated, perhaps they could change the family's life. But she also knew that messing with powerful people could bring consequences. Back home, she found Robert trying to fix the kitchen faucet with tools borrowed from a neighbor. The children were playing in the small backyard, pretending they weren't hungry. "Robert, I need to tell you something important," said Jennifer, pulling him aside. She recounted the conversation at the library. Robert listened silently, frowning as she spoke. "Jennifer, are you sure you want to stir this up? Powerful people don't like being bothered." "And what do you suggest? That we accept being evicted and live on the streets with 11 kids? That's not it, but Robert, look at our children. They deserve a chance. If there's the slightest possibility we can get something from these maps, we have to try." Robert looked at his playing children. Michael was trying to teach Gabriel how to juggle small stones. Haley was singing softly to calm her 2-year-old brother Luke. The younger girls, Julia and Carly, aged 5 and 6, were competing over who could build the best sandcastle on the packed dirt ground. "All right," he said finally, "but we must be very careful." The next day, Jennifer dressed in her most presentable clothes and went to find Attorney Elliott. The house on Blossom Street was simple but well kept, with a garden full of flowers that contrasted with the neglected buildings around it. Attorney Elliott was a gentleman with white hair and a kind gaze. He received Jennifer on the front porch, offering her coffee while examining the documents. "Mrs. Wilson, these maps are very interesting," he said, adjusting his glasses. "I see signatures and stamps that appear authentic. Do you think my uncle was right?" "It's possible. In the 80s, there were many irregularities in land documentation around here. Some people took advantage of the confusion to appropriate others' properties." Attorney Elliott explained that deeper research would be needed at the county clerk's office and City Hall to confirm the document's authenticity. "But I must warn you right away, Mrs. Wilson, if these papers prove there was irregularity, we'll be messing with very influential people in town." "Doctor, we have nothing left to lose," replied Jennifer. "We're about to be evicted and we can't even feed our children properly. I understand, I'll take the case, but I can't charge for my services. I'm retired and I'm only doing this because I believe in justice." Jennifer left Attorney Elliott's house with a mix of relief and anxiety. Finally, there was someone willing to help them, but she knew the road would be difficult. When she got home, she found chaos. Richard Thompson was at the gate, talking to Robert in an aggressive tone. He was a burly man with a graying mustache, wearing an expensive dress shirt that contrasted with the simplicity of the street. "Robert, I'm being polite because I know you're hard-working people," Richard was saying. "But if you keep spreading lies about me around town, this conversation will take a different turn." "What is he talking about?" asked Jennifer, approaching. "Your wife has been meddling in matters that are none of her business," Richard replied, looking her up and down. "Listen here, miss. I don't know what crazy ideas you have in your heads, but I suggest you forget them. I can help you in other ways." "What kind of help?" Jennifer wanted to know. "I know people at City Hall. I can get your husband a steady job, maybe even a better house to live in. But in return, you stop messing with those old papers." The children had stopped playing and were watching the conversation from a distance. Emily Grace was holding little Lily in her lap, whispering for her to be quiet. "And if we don't accept?" asked Robert. Richard smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Then you'll find out that life can get much harder than it already is." After Richard left, the family gathered in the kitchen. Robert was visibly upset, but Jennifer remained determined. "Did you see how nervous he got?" she said. "That proves there's something wrong indeed." "Jennifer, the man isn't joking," Robert replied. "If he wants to, he can hurt us in 1,000 ways. And do you think accepting his crumbs will solve our problems? Robert, he was scared. Innocent people don't make threats." Emily Grace, who had put Lily to sleep, joined the conversation. "Mom, if Uncle George was right, does that mean our family was robbed?" It's possible, honey. And if we were, we have the right to fight to get back what's ours. Peter, always observant, asked a question that silenced everyone. And if we find out we have a right to these lands, what are we going to do with them? It was a good question. The family had never thought beyond simply surviving. The idea of owning property seemed like a dream too far away. "One thing at a time," said Jennifer. "First, we'll find out the truth. Then we'll figure out what to do with it." In the following days, while Attorney Elliott researched at the county clerk's offices, the Wilson family's life became more complicated. Robert was let go from 2 temporary jobs without explanation. Jennifer lost some cleaning jobs because the employers said they had received negative comments about her. "It's Richard," said Jennifer, watching Robert come home once again without finding work. "He's making good on his threat." The children began to feel the pressure. At school, some teachers started treating the Wilson children coldly. Michael came home saying that the gym teacher had said that certain families should know their place. "Mom, why is everyone being mean to us?" asked Gabriel with tears in his eyes. Jennifer hugged her son, feeling her heart break. The consequences of her decision were affecting the children, and it made her question if she was doing the right thing. "Son, sometimes in life we have to go through hard times to achieve important things," she explained. "Your Uncle George suffered a lot because no one believed him. This is our chance to prove he was right." "But will it work, Mom?" asked Haley, stroking one of the kittens she had adopted. "I don't know, my dear, but I know if we don't try, we'll never find out." A week later, Attorney Elliott called asking to meet at his home. Jennifer and Robert went together, leaving Emily Grace to look after the younger siblings. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," said the attorney with a serious expression, "the news is both good and bad at the same time." He spread several documents across the living room table. "The good news is that your uncle's maps are authentic. I found records proving he actually owned 3 plots of land in the central area of the city." "And the bad news?" asked Robert. "The bad news is that Richard Thompson did indeed take over these lands, using forged documentation. But this happened over 30 years ago, and he has had quiet and peaceful possession. It will be very difficult to prove the fraud." Jennifer felt her world crumbling. They were right, but that didn't mean they could do anything about it. "So there's no way?" she asked. "I didn't say that," replied Attorney Elliott. "I found some irregularities in the documents Richard submitted at the time. If we can prove he knew he was committing fraud, there's still a chance." "What kind of irregularities?" "The signatures don't match. There's also the issue of the witnesses who signed the documents. 2 of them have passed away, but the 3rd one is still alive. She's an elderly lady named Teresa Oliver." Robert and Jennifer exchanged glances. Mrs. Teresa lived in their neighborhood and was known as an honest and religious person. "Do you think she would talk to us?" asked Jennifer. "We can try," said Attorney Elliott, "but be discreet. If Richard finds out we're investigating, he might try to intimidate the witnesses." The following Sunday, Jennifer went to visit Mrs. Teresa. She found her at the 8 o'clock Mass, as always. She waited for the ceremony to end and walked her home. "Mrs. Teresa, may I speak with you about a delicate matter?" The white-haired woman with a kind face invited Jennifer inside. Her home was simple but filled with saints and flowers. "What can I do for you, my dear?" Jennifer explained the situation, showing some of the documents Attorney Elliott had copied. As she spoke, Mrs. Teresa grew increasingly pale. "Good heavens," murmured the elderly woman. "I knew something wasn't right. Do you remember what happened?" "How could I forget? Richard came to me saying he needed witnesses for some papers. He said it was just a formality, that your uncle had sold the lands to him but forgot to do everything properly." "And you believed him?" Mrs. Teresa lowered her head, visibly embarrassed. "Back then I was young and needed the money he offered for signing. My husband was sick and we couldn't afford the medicine." "But you suspected something was wrong?" "Yes, I did. George showed up at my house a few days later, saying he had never sold any land, that he was being robbed. But Richard had already filed the papers." Jennifer felt a mix of anger and sadness. Mrs. Teresa had been used by Richard, just as her family was being threatened now. "Mrs. Teresa, would you be willing to tell this to an attorney?" The elderly woman remained silent for a long time, fiddling with the rosary in her hands. "My dear, I'm 78 years old. I've never forgiven myself for being part of that, even though I didn't fully understand what I was doing. If I can help bring justice to George's family, I will do it." Jennifer left Mrs. Teresa's house with her heart full of hope. Finally, they had a witness willing to speak the truth. But when she arrived home, she found a desperate situation. The property owner was at the door with two men, apparently court officers. "Are you Jennifer Wilson?" one of them asked. "That's me." "We have an eviction order. You have 24 hours to vacate the property." Robert stood frozen in the doorway, his expression defeated. The children watched from the window, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensing the tension in the air. "What do you mean 24 hours?" protested Jennifer. "We had more time." "The owner obtained an injunction. He claimed you're 4 months behind and pose a risk to the property." Jennifer knew it was a lie. They were 3 months behind, not 4. But she also knew arguing was probably useless. After the men left, the family gathered in the living room. Some children began to cry, others stayed silent. Emily Grace hugged Lily, trying to calm her. "Where are we going, Mom?" asked Peter. Jennifer looked at her husband, searching for an answer neither of them had. "We'll go to the trailer," Robert finally said. "It's not ideal, but it's what we have." "Dad, will we all fit there?" asked Michael. "We'll make it work, son. Until we get something better." That night was one of the hardest in the Wilson family's life. They packed their few belongings into bags and cardboard boxes, knowing they'd be homeless the next day. Jennifer called Attorney Elliott, telling him about the eviction. "This isn't a coincidence," he said. "Richard is increasing pressure for you to drop the lawsuit." "Attorney, I don't know how much more we can take," confessed Jennifer. "The children are suffering so much." "Mrs. Wilson, I understand completely. But now that we have Teresa Oliver willing to testify, we're very close to proving the fraud. If you give up now, Richard wins, and your family will never get justice." "And if we can't prove anything? Will we have suffered all this for nothing?" "It's possible," admitted the lawyer. "But it's also possible you'll reclaim what's rightfully yours and build a better life for these 11 children." The next morning, the Wilson family said goodbye to the house they'd lived in for 5 years. Neighbors watched silently as they loaded their belongings into a borrowed truck. Mrs. Johnson, the gossip, didn't miss the chance to comment. They shouldn't have messed with important people. Now they faced the consequences. Emily Grace was about to respond when Jennifer grabbed her arm. "Let it go, daughter. Those without character speak for others." The trailer was parked in a vacant lot on the outskirts of town. When they opened the door, the smell of mold hit them like a slap. After a week of cleaning, the space remained too small for 13 people. "We'll do it like this," Jennifer organized. "The girls sleep on one side, the boys on the other. Your father and I sleep in the front." "And where will we study?" asked Emily Grace. "We'll set up a table here in the middle during the day. At night, you'll do homework on cardboard boxes on your laps." The children tried to maintain good humor, but their discomfort was visible. 2-year-old Luke cried constantly because of the cramped space. Haley tried to calm the kittens, who were also frightened by the move. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Robert went out every day looking for work, but the situation had worsened. Richard's influence in town was greater than they'd imagined. He couldn't even find part-time jobs. Jennifer tried to do some cleaning work, but it was hard to leave the children alone in the trailer. Emily Grace helped care for her younger siblings, though she herself was just a teenager. 2 weeks after moving into the trailer, Attorney Elliott appeared with urgent news. "Mrs. Jennifer, we need to talk," he said, looking agitated. They moved away from the children for privacy. "What happened, Attorney?" "Mrs. Teresa called me last night. Richard went looking for her." Jennifer felt her blood run cold. "What did he want?" "He offered her money not to testify. When she refused, he threatened her." "Threatened how?" "He said she was too old to walk around town alone, that accidents could happen to people her age." Jennifer leaned against the trailer, feeling her legs tremble. "Attorney, this is very dangerous. I can't put Mrs. Teresa at risk for our sake." "Calm down, Mrs. Jennifer. Mrs. Teresa is braver than she seems. She recorded the whole conversation on her granddaughter's phone." "She recorded it?" "Yes, and that changes everything. Now we have proof that Richard is trying to intimidate witnesses. This strengthens our case a lot." For the first time in weeks, Jennifer felt a spark of hope, but it was soon replaced by worry. "The attorney, if Richard finds out that Mrs. Teresa recorded—" "That's why we need to act fast. I'll file the lawsuit this week, along with all the evidence we have." That night, Jennifer told Robert about the recording. He listened in silence, shaking his head. "Jennifer, this is getting too dangerous," he said. "Maybe it's better to accept Richard's offer and forget this whole thing." "Robert, look around. Look where we're living. Look at how our children are suffering. Do you think accepting crumbs from him will solve anything? At least they'd have a decent roof over their heads. And when he decides he doesn't need us anymore, what happens to us? Robert, this is our only real chance to change our lives." Her husband looked at their children, who were trying to do their homework sitting on the trailer floor. Emily Grace was helping the younger ones with their tasks while holding Lily in her lap. Peter was reading a book in the dim light of the lamp. Michael and Gabriel were fighting for space on a cardboard box that served as a table. "All right," said Robert finally, "we'll see it through, but if things get much worse, we stop." The next day, Attorney Elliott filed the lawsuit. The news spread quickly through the small town. Some supported the Wilson family, others criticized them for messing with the wrong people. At school, the children began to feel even more pressure. Some classmates teased them, calling them trespassers and liars. Haley came home crying because a teacher had said that certain families make up stories to get easy money. "Mum, why are people being so mean?" she asked. "Honey, when someone very powerful does something wrong, they can convince many people that it's others who are wrong," explained Jennifer. "But we know the truth, and that's what matters." 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, Richard showed up at the trailer. This time he wasn't alone. He brought 2 large, intimidating-looking men. "Robert, Jennifer," he said, not hiding his irritation, "you've gone too far." "We just want what's rightfully ours," replied Jennifer, trying to keep her voice steady. "Rightfully? You have no right to anything. These lands have been mine for over 30 years. Lands you stole from my uncle." Richard took a step forward, his eyes blazing with anger. "Watch what you say, Jennifer. Defamation is a crime." "And so is document forgery," she retorted. One of the men with Richard moved his hand toward his coat pocket. Robert positioned himself in front of his wife, ready to protect her. "Richard, if you want to talk, let's talk, but send your goons away." "They're not goons, they're my associates," said Richard, but he signaled for the men to step back. "Listen carefully, both of you. I'm still willing to make a deal. I'll give you a nice house to live in and a steady job for Robert. In return, you drop this nonsense." "What if we don't accept?" asked Robert. "Then you'll find out things can get much worse than they already are." Jennifer looked at her children, who were watching the conversation from inside the trailer. Peter had positioned himself in front of his younger siblings, as if wanting to protect them. "Richard, I'll make a counteroffer," she said, surprising herself with her courage. "You admit you stole my uncle's land, return what's rightfully ours, and we forget all this business about fake documentation." Richard let out a sarcastic laugh. "You're delusional, Jennifer. I won't admit anything because I did nothing wrong." "Then we'll see you in court." "You'll regret this," said Richard, walking away. "And don't say I didn't warn you." After they left, the family gathered in the trailer. The children were frightened, some crying. "Mom, are those men going to hurt us?" asked Gabriel. "No, son. People like them only make threats. When it comes down to it, they're cowards." But Jennifer wasn't as confident as she seemed. The presence of the 2 men had made it clear that Richard was losing patience. That night, Robert suggested they set up shifts so someone would always be awake, keeping watch. "Robert, don't you think that's excessive?" asked Jennifer. "I'd rather be overly cautious than regret it later." The following week, strange things began to happen. The water supply to the trailer was cut off. The electricity, which they'd been illegally tapping from a nearby pole, was disconnected. Someone slashed two of the trailer's tires overnight. "This isn't a coincidence," said Attorney Elliott when Jennifer went to see him. "Richard is trying to force you to give up. And it's working, Attorney. The children are getting thirsty. We can't even boil water to cook properly. Hang in there, Mrs. Wilson. The judge scheduled the hearing for 15 days from now. If we can make it until then, we have a chance to win. And if we can't, we will make it. So I'm sure." But Attorney Elliott seemed less confident than his words suggested. To get water, Jennifer and the children had to walk 3 blocks to a public water spigot, carrying heavy gallons. Peter and Emily Grace helped, but it was hard work. During one of these walks, Mrs. Miller, the librarian, pulled her car over beside them. "Jennifer, get in. I'll give you a ride." During the drive, she got straight to the point. "I know you're having difficulties because of your fight with Richard. Do you know anything that could help us?" asked Jennifer. "Maybe. My mother worked at City Hall in the 80s. Before she died, she mentioned some irregularities in land records from that time." "What kind of irregularities?" "Documents that went missing, stamps that were used on papers without authorization. My mother always suspected there was corruption involved." "Did your mother ever mention Richard?" "Not directly. But she kept some papers from that time. After she died, I found a box with old City Hall documents. I never knew what to do with them." Jennifer felt her heart race. "Mrs. Miller, do those papers still exist?" "They do. They've been stored in my attic for 5 years. Would you let Attorney Elliott take a look at them?" "Of course. If it can help bring justice, I'll hand everything over to him." That afternoon, Attorney Elliott went to Mrs. Miller's house to examine the documents. He returned visibly excited. "Mrs. Wilson, this is dynamite," he said, showing some yellowed pages. "What did you find?" "Proof that there was indeed a scheme at City Hall to falsify property documents, and Richard's name appears in several suspicious transactions." "Is this enough for us to win the case?" "Along with everything we already have, yes, but I need a few more days to organize the evidence properly." Jennifer returned to the trailer with renewed hope. She shared the news with Robert and the children, who got excited. "Does that mean we're going to win, Mom?" asked Haley. "We're not sure yet, honey, but we're on the right track." 2 nights later, Jennifer woke up to the sound of breaking glass. Someone had thrown a rock through the trailer window, along with a note. "Last chance. Give up or the consequences will be worse." Robert examined the note by flashlight. "Jennifer, they mean business. Maybe it's better to accept Richard's offer." "Robert, the hearing is less than 10 days away. Now that we have all this evidence, we can't back down. What if they do something to the kids? That's exactly why we can't give in. If we show fear now, they'll keep threatening us for the rest of our lives." The next morning, Emily Grace offered to take her younger siblings to a cousin's house to play, so they wouldn't have to hear their parents' worries. "Mom, I know you're concerned," she said before leaving, "but I trust you. If you think it's right to fight, then we'll fight." The maturity of her 16-year-old daughter moved Jennifer. Emily Grace was growing up too fast, taking on responsibilities that weren't hers. 5 days before the hearing, Attorney Elliott called urgently. "Mrs. Wilson, I need you to come here right away." "Did something happen?" "Richard tried to bribe me. He offered a lot of money to convince you to drop the case." "And what did you say?" "That he could stick his money wherever he wanted." But I recorded the whole conversation. When they arrived at the lawyer's house, he showed them the recorder with the dialogue. "Listen to this," he said, pressing play. Richard's voice came out clearly from the device. "Attorney Elliott, let's be practical. This family doesn't have the resources to fight me. Take this money, convince them to back off, and everyone wins. Mr. Thompson, this is attempted bribery. This is negotiation. No one needs to know. Just tell them their chances of winning are slim." "I won't do that. Then you're making a mistake for all of you." "This is another piece of evidence against him," said Attorney Elliott. "He's digging his own grave." "Attorney, with all this evidence, what are our real chances?" asked Robert. "Look, I'll be honest with you. We have a strong case, but Richard has a lot of influence. The judge who will hear the case is from town, knows everyone. I don't know how he'll react." "You mean even with all the proof we could still lose?" "Yes, justice isn't always fair, unfortunately. but I have a good feeling about the judge assigned to the case. Judge Matthew has a reputation for being honest. On the eve of the hearing, the family spent a sleepless night. The children tried to sleep in the cramped trailer, but the tension was palpable. Jennifer and Robert talked softly until dawn. "Robert, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know I don't regret anything." "Me neither, Jennifer. At least we tried. If we win, what will we do with the land? First thing is to build a decent house for our children. And then we'll see. Maybe start a business, provide jobs for other people in town." "That would be beautiful, right? Using our victory to help others who are going through what we went through." "It would. But first, we have to win." On the morning of the hearing, the whole family dressed in the best clothes they had. Emily Grace helped comb her younger sister's hair. Peter lent a shirt to Gabriel, who had outgrown his own. "Everyone, no matter what happens today," said Jennifer, gathering them all before leaving the trailer. "You two are the best thing Dad and I have in our lives. We're fighting for you to give you a better future." "And what if we lose?" asked Michael. "If we lose, at least we tried. And that's more than many people do in life." The courthouse was packed when they arrived. Richard was there with 2 lawyers in expensive suits. On the other side, Attorney Elliott was organizing his folders with the evidence. Mrs. Teresa Oliver arrived leaning on her granddaughter, but with a determined expression. Mrs. Miller was also present, bringing the box with her mother's documents. The judge was a middle-aged man, stern-looking but with kind eyes. He listened carefully to both sides' arguments. When Attorney Elliott presented the evidence, Jennifer noticed Richard starting to sweat. The forged documents were displayed on the table, along with recordings of the bribery attempts. "Your Honor," said Richard's lawyer, "these documents are very old. There's no way to prove their authenticity after so much time." "On the contrary," replied Attorney Elliott, "I've brought a documentation expert who can attest to the paper's authenticity." The hearing lasted 4 hours. Mrs. Teresa Oliver testified with a steady voice, telling every detail of how she had been deceived by Richard. The recordings were played for the judge, who listened to everything in silence. In the end, the judge said he would give the verdict in a week. "A week," whispered Jennifer to Attorney Elliott. "I can't wait that long." "It's normal, Mrs. Jennifer. The judge needs to carefully review all the evidence." That week was the longest in the Wilson family's life. Each day seemed to have 48 hours. The children tried to maintain their routine, but everyone was anxious. On the day the verdict was announced, the courthouse was even more crowded. The whole town wanted to know the trial's outcome. The judge entered the room with a serious expression. Jennifer tightly held Robert's hand. After reviewing all the evidence presented, the magistrate began, "It is proven that there were irregularities in the documentation of the lands in question." Jennifer felt her heart almost stop. "The evidence shows that Mr. Richard Thompson used false documentation to take possession of properties that did not belong to him." Richard stood up from his chair, visibly upset. "Your Honor, this is absurd. "Silence," said the judge, banging the gavel. "Therefore, I order the immediate return of the lands to the rightful heirs, in this case, the Wilson family." The room erupted in murmurs. Jennifer hugged Robert, crying with emotion. The children hugged each other, unable to believe what they were hearing. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I order Mr. Richard Thompson to pay compensation for the damages caused to the family, the amount to be calculated later." Richard left the room stomping his feet, followed by his lawyers. Before leaving, he looked at Jennifer with hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over," he murmured. But his threats no longer carried the same weight. Justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, the family was surrounded by neighbors and acquaintances. Some congratulated them. Others seemed displeased with the outcome. Mrs. Miller hugged Jennifer. "I knew you would succeed. Your persistence paid off." Mrs. Teresa Oliver also approached. "My dear, I feel relieved to have finally done the right thing. Your uncle can rest in peace now." Attorney Elliott was beaming. "Mrs. Jennifer, this was one of the most beautiful victories I've seen in my career. You deserve every inch of those lands. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Back at the trailer that night, the family celebrated with a cheap pizza they managed to buy. It wasn't much, but for them, it was a party. "Dad, are we going to be rich now?" asked 2-year-old Luke, not quite understanding what was happening. "I don't know about rich, son," replied Robert, "but we'll have a decent place to live and a chance to build something better." "Can I have my own room?" asked Haley. "We'll see, honey. First, we need to build the house." Emily Grace, ever practical, asked an important question. "Mum, when can we see the properties?" It was a good question. In the following days, Attorney Elliott accompanied them to see the properties they had recovered. The first property was in the city centre, where a cooperative used to operate. It was a large space, well located, but in need of repairs. "This would be good for starting a business," said Robert, looking around. The second property was smaller, on a residential street. Ideal for building a family home. The third was a surprise. It was at the entrance to the town and had a beautiful view of the mountains. It was the largest of the three. "Mom, it's beautiful here," said Emily Grace. "We could do a lot with it." "Like what?" asked Jennifer Wilson. "I don't know. An inn, a small farm, and there's even a spring back there." The possibilities seemed endless. After so long dreaming only of survival, now they had to learn to dream big. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In the days following the verdict, the family began to feel subtle hostility from parts of the town. Richard had many allies, and not everyone took his defeat well. At school, some children started teasing the Wilson kids again. "Now you think you're rich," a classmate told Peter, "but everyone knows you stole from Richard." "We didn't steal anything," Peter replied. "The court decided the properties are ours." "The court? The judge must have been bought by your family." Peter came home and told about the incident. Jennifer realized that the victory in court was just the beginning of a new phase of challenges. "Son, there will always be people who don't like seeing others get ahead in life," she explained. "What matters is that we know we did the right thing. But will they keep talking badly about us? Some will, but others will see that we're honest, hard-working people. In time, the truth always comes out." The first weeks after the verdict were spent planning for the future. Robert got work at a construction site and started saving money to begin building the house. Jennifer continued doing cleaning jobs, but now with a different motivation. Every dollar saved was another brick in their dream home. The children pitched in too. Emily Grace got a part-time job at a store. Peter helped a neighbor with gardening on weekends. Even Michael and Gabriel found small jobs delivering goods for a grocery store. "Mom, why can't we use the settlement money to build the house?" asked Emily Grace. "Because we haven't received it yet, honey. And when we do, we'll use it wisely. Some for the house, some to start a business." "What kind of business? I don't know yet." "We'll think about it together." Ideas started coming up during family talks in the trailer. Haley suggested raising animals on the larger property. Peter thought about growing vegetables to sell in town. Emily Grace talked about starting a family inn. "Those are all good ideas," said Jennifer, "but let's take it slow. First the house, then the business." 3 months after the verdict, they received the first part of the settlement. It was more money than the family had ever seen together in their lives, but Jennifer knew they needed to use it wisely. "Robert, let's hire a mason to help you with the construction," she said. "I can do it alone, Jennifer. To save money." "No, we want a good house, well built, and you can't quit your other jobs to focus only on the construction." They found an experienced and honest bricklayer, Mr. Anthony, who agreed to do the construction for a fair price. The house design was drawn up by the family themselves, with help from a friend of Attorney Elliott, who was an architect. It would be a simple but comfortable house. 4 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, a large kitchen, and 3 bathrooms. A luxury for those who had been living cramped in a trailer. "Mom, will there be a yard for the kittens?" asked Haley. "Yes, honey. And you'll be able to plant any flowers you want." Construction began on a sunny Saturday. The whole family participated in the first excavation. Even 3-year-old Lily held a toy shovel. "This is going to be our home," said Jennifer, moved. "Our real home." The neighbors in the area where they were building were more welcoming than those in the city center. They were simple, hard-working people who understood the Wilson family's struggle. Mrs. Mary, who lived next door, offered to look after the younger children while Jennifer worked. "No need to pay anything," she said. "I like children, and yours are very well behaved." The solidarity of people like Mrs. Mary contrasted with the hostility they still encountered in other parts of the city. During construction, Richard tried once again to hinder the family. He challenged the compensation in court, claiming the amount was overestimated. "He can't accept defeat," said Attorney Elliott, "but there's no way to reverse the ruling. At most, he might get the compensation amount reduced a bit." "And does that hurt us a lot?" "No. Even if it's reduced, you have enough to finish the house and still set up the business." The house construction progressed quickly. Mr. Anthony was a dedicated professional, and Robert learned a lot working alongside him. "Mr. Robert, you have a knack for construction," said the bricklayer. "If you want, I can properly teach you the trade." "I'd really like that, Mr. Anthony. I've always wanted to learn a craft." "Then let's do it this way. You help me on other jobs, and I teach you everything I know." It was another opportunity opening up. With the land and a skilled profession, Robert could provide a much better life for the family. 6 months after construction began, the house was almost ready. Only the finishing touches and painting remained. One Sunday afternoon, the family went to walk through the construction site. The children ran through the empty rooms, shouting with joy. "This is going to be my room," said Haley, spinning around in what would be her space. "And this will be ours," said Michael and Gabriel, already choosing where to put the beds. Emily Grace stopped in the main living room, looking out the large window that faced the backyard. "Mom, I can't believe all this is ours." "Yes, you can, honey, and you deserve every inch of it." Lily ran to Jennifer and hugged her legs. "Mommy, it doesn't smell bad here like in the trailer." Jennifer laughed, picking up her daughter. "No, it doesn't, my love, and it never will." Robert approached, putting his arm around his wife. "We did it, Jennifer, we really did it." "Yes, we did, and this is just the beginning." While waiting for the house to be finished, the family began seriously planning the business they would set up. Discussions happened every night in the trailer, with everyone giving suggestions. "What if we opened a restaurant?" suggested Peter. "Do you know how to cook?" asked Emily Grace. "No, but I can learn." "Mom cooks really well," said Haley. "She could teach people." "A cooking school," considered Jennifer. "That's interesting." "Or we could set up a cooperative instead," said Robert. "Like before, in your uncle's time." "A cooperative for what?" "Production, farming, raising animals, crafts, several families working together." The cooperative idea gained momentum. It was a way to honor Uncle George's memory and at the same time help other families in need. "But do we know how to run a cooperative?" asked Emily Grace. "We don't know," admitted Jennifer, "but we can learn. And we can start small, just with our family, and grow little by little." 1 week before moving to the new house, they received an unexpected visit. Richard showed up at the trailer, but this time alone and with a different attitude. "Jennifer, Robert," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Can I talk to you?" Robert tensed up, but Jennifer decided to listen. "What do you want, Richard?" "I want to make peace. I know things got bad between us, but it doesn't have to be that way forever." "Make peace?" repeated Jennifer, incredulous. "After everything you did to our family?" "Look, I admit I went too far, but you two also went overboard. We could have settled this amicably." "Amicably? You stole my uncle's land, threatened us, tried to bribe witnesses." Okay. Maybe I was wrong about some things. But now you've won. You got the land back. How about we make a deal for the future? Robert and Jennifer exchanged glances. "What kind of deal?" asked Robert. "I have business experience. You have the land, but you don't know what to do with it. We could be partners." "Partners?" Jennifer almost laughed. "Richard, do you really think we'd trust you after all that?" "Think about it. You're new to this business stuff. You could lose everything if you make the wrong choices. With me as a partner, you have a guarantee of success." "And what do you get out of it?" "A small percentage. Let's say 30%. Jennifer shook her head. "Richard, with all due respect, you can take your proposal and shove it where the sun doesn't shine." Jennifer, don't be stubborn. It's a good opportunity for you. The only good opportunity for us is for you to get out of our lives and never come back." Richard turned red with anger but tried to keep his composure. "You'll regret this. Without my experience, you'll fall flat on your face." "I'd rather fall flat on my face being honest than prosper by being dishonest," Jennifer replied. "Fine, but when you need help, don't come looking for me. Don't worry, that will never happen." After Richard left, Robert hugged his wife. "You were perfect, Jennifer. Couldn't have answered better. He still thinks he can use us, but our children will grow up knowing there's an honest way to succeed in life." On moving day to the new house, half the town showed up to help, not out of self-interest, but out of genuine admiration for the Wilson family's perseverance. Mr. Anthony, the bricklayer, brought a truck to transport their things from the trailer. Mrs. Mary made lunch for all the volunteers. Even Mrs. Miller showed up with a cake as a gift. "You deserve all the happiness in the world," she said, hugging Jennifer. The children ran through the new house like birds freed from a cage. Each chose their own little corner, their special spaces. Emily Grace was put in charge of the girls' room. Peter shared the boys' room with Michael and Gabriel. Haley got a little spot on the porch for her plants. Even the white kittens had a special space in the backyard. "Mum, can I invite my friend Carly to sleep over on Saturday?" asked Haley. "Of course, honey. Now we have room for visitors." For the first time in years, the word visitors made sense to the Wilson family. On their first night in the new house, Jennifer and Robert stayed up late talking about the future. "Robert, I still can't believe we're here." "Me neither. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It wasn't a dream. And you know what that means?" "What?" "That dreams can come true when we fight for them." "And what's the next dream?" "To set up the cooperative, to help other families like ours." "It'll be a lot of work." "It will. But we've already proven we know how to face hard work." In the following months, the family began to put the cooperative's plan into practice. They used the larger plot of land to grow vegetables and raise chickens. Emily Grace, who had just finished high school, enrolled in a rural management course offered by the city council. Peter discovered he had a talent for working with plants. His small herb garden turned into a vegetable patch that supplied half the neighborhood. Michael and Gabriel specialized in animal care. They started with a few chickens, but soon managed to buy pigs and goats. Haley became the family artist. She made crochet and embroidery pieces that sold well at the town market. Even the younger children contributed. Julia and Carly helped package products for sale. Luke, now 3 years old, became the cooperative's official mascot. The business grew slowly but steadily. By the end of the first year, they already had 2 other families working with them. "Mom, if we keep growing like this, we'll soon need more space," said Emily Grace, who had become the cooperative's unofficial manager. "And we will," replied Jennifer Wilson. "The land is big. There's still plenty of room to expand." The cooperative wasn't just a business. It was a shared dream of creating a community where hard-working families could prosper with dignity. Attorney Elliott visited frequently, keeping track of the progress of the family he had helped achieve justice for. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm very proud of what you've built," he said during one of these visits. "Attorney, none of this would have been possible without your support. You believed in us when no one else did." "No, Mrs. Wilson, I just helped you prove what you already knew, that the truth always wins in the end." The Wilson family's reputation in town had completely changed. From troublemakers who messed with the big shots, they came to be seen as an example of perseverance and honesty. Even some people who had previously supported Richard Thompson began to acknowledge that the family had been wronged. "You were right from the start," admitted a neighbor who had criticized the legal battle. "Richard was indeed dishonest." Jennifer Wilson held no grudges against those who had doubted them. "I don't blame anyone for believing in Richard," she always replied. "He had power and influence. It was natural for people to trust him." 2 years after moving into the new house, the cooperative had grown so much that it needed to become officially formalized. Emily Grace, now a graduate in rural management, became the official manager. "Mum, we have 15 families working with us now," she reported at a family meeting, "and requests from 5 more to join." "How are the finances?" asked Robert. "Very good. Everyone is earning more than they did before, and we're still investing in expansion." "And the plans for the future?" "Peter wants to set up a sustainable farming school. Haley is planning a crafts workshop. Michael and Gabriel want to expand the livestock." Jennifer Wilson looked at her children, seeing them transformed from desperate kids into young entrepreneurs full of dreams. "Do you know what makes me proudest in all of this?" she said. "It's not the money we make or the house we have. It's seeing you grow up, knowing you can achieve anything with honest work." "Mum, what if Uncle George hadn't kept those maps?" asked Gabriel. "If Uncle George hadn't kept the maps, we would have found another way to win," Jennifer Wilson replied without hesitation. "Because I learned one thing. When the family comes together and fights for a just cause, they always find a way. Even if it's hard. Especially when it's hard, easy victories teach nothing. The hard ones build character." In the cooperative's third year, they received an unexpected proposal. The city wanted them to manage a family farming project for the entire region. "It would be a huge responsibility," said Emily Grace during the family meeting. "We would be taking care of over 100 families." "Do you think we can do it?" asked Jennifer. "We can do it," said Peter. "We have experience now, and we know it works." "And it would be a way to honor Uncle George's memory even more," added Haley. "He always dreamed of helping hard-working families." The decision was unanimous. They accepted the challenge. The regional project was a success. The Wilson Cooperative became a model for other towns, receiving visitors from all over the state interested in replicating the experience. "I never imagined those old maps would lead to all this," said Robert, watching the activity at the cooperative headquarters, which now occupied part of the central property. "The maps were important," replied Jennifer. "But the most important thing was always our determination not to give up." One Sunday afternoon, 5 years after the discovery of the maps in the trailer, the family gathered in the backyard for a barbecue. Everyone was there. The 11 children now grown up. Attorney Elliot, Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Teresa, Mr. Anthony, Mrs. Mary, and dozens of families who were part of the cooperative. "Everyone," said Jennifer, calling for attention, "I want to make a toast." Everyone raised their glass of soda or beer. "A toast to Uncle George, who kept the truth so that one day it could shine. A toast to all the people who believed in us when it seemed impossible. And a toast to you, my children, who taught me that a united family can move mountains. And a toast to our warrior mother," said Emily Grace with teary eyes, "who never gave up fighting for us." The chorus of cheers echoed through the backyard, mixed with laughter and lively conversations. Later, when the guests had left, the family sat on the porch enjoying the cool night air. "Mom," said Haley, now 15, "do you remember what life was like in the trailer?" "Yes, I do, honey. It feels like it was in another life." "Do you miss it?" Jennifer thought before answering. "Miss isn't quite the word, but I have fondness for that time, you know. It was there that we learned we had the strength to overcome anything. What if we had accepted Richard's offer in the beginning? Then you would never have discovered what you're capable of, and I would never have discovered that I could be more than a mother who just survives. I found out I can be a mother who builds a legacy." Lily, now 8 years old, came over and snuggled into Jennifer's lap. "Mommy, tell the story of the maps again." "Again? You've heard that story 1,000 times." "But I like it. It's a beautiful story." Jennifer began to tell, once again, the story of how a rusty trailer had changed their lives. But she realized that the version changed with each telling, not the facts, which remained the same, but the meaning. At first, it was a story about hidden maps and reclaimed land. Then, it became a story about justice and perseverance. Now, it was a story about the transformative power of family unity and determination. "And do you know what the best part of the story is?" she said, coming to the end of the narration. "What?" asked several voices together. "That it's not over yet. Every day that passes, we write a new chapter." Robert came over and hugged his wife. "Jennifer, thank you for not giving up, for believing that we deserved more. Robert, thank you for trusting me, even when I doubted myself." Emily Grace, who had overheard the conversation, smiled. You know what I think is the most beautiful thing about this whole story? What? Asked Peter. That you taught us that it doesn't matter where we come from. What matters is where we're going. The stars shone in the Kentucky sky, illuminating a family that had discovered that the most important maps weren't hidden in rusty trailers, but kept in the heart of every person willing to fight for their dreams. The following year, the cooperative received an award from the state government as the best rural development project. Jennifer was invited to speak at the award ceremony. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the microphone, still intimidated by the large audience. 6 years ago, my family lived in a trailer and didn't even have food to eat. Today, we have the honor of managing a project that feeds hundreds of families. The audience applauded, but Jennifer raised her hand asking for silence. But I'm not here to talk about success. I'm here to talk about resilience, about not accepting injustice, about fighting for our children even when everything seems lost. The rusty trailer we inherited had no material value, but it had something much more precious, the truth. And the truth, ladies and gentlemen, always finds a way to shine. If there's one lesson I want to leave today, it's this. No matter how small we feel in front of the powerful, when we have the truth on our side and family by our side, we are invincible. The audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Jennifer left knowing her story could inspire other families not to give up on their dreams. Back home, she found a surprise. Richard was sitting on the house porch talking with Robert, but this time his posture was completely different. "Jennifer," he said, standing up, "I came to apologize." She looked at him suspiciously. "Apologize?" "Yes, for what I did to your family, for the threats, for how I treated you." "And why now?" Richard sighed, looking older and tired. "Because I saw what you built, the cooperative, the jobs you created, the families you helped, and I realized you achieved in 5 years what I never managed in 30. What's that? You earned people's genuine respect. Not out of fear or self-interest, but out of admiration." Jennifer studied the face of the man who had been her adversary. "Richard, I accept your apology, but I haven't forgotten what we went through. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I can be different." "How?" "I want to donate land to the cooperative. It's a property I've had sitting idle for years. It could help expand the project." Robert and Jennifer exchanged surprised glances. "Why would you do that?" asked Robert. "Because I want to die knowing I did at least one right thing in my life." Jennifer remained silent for a long time. "All right," she said finally, "but on one condition." "What?" "You'll work at the cooperative. As a volunteer. You'll learn what it means to build something based on honesty." "I accept," Richard replied without hesitation. And so the man who had once been the Wilson family's enemy became part of the overcoming story they were writing. 2 years later, on a Saturday morning, Jennifer was in the house garden when Emily Grace came running. "Mom, you need to see the newspaper." The front page story was about the cooperative, but the focus was different. The headline read, "From Rusty Trailer to Rural Empire, the story inspiring America." "Mom, they called our cooperative an empire," said Emily Grace excitedly. "Empire?" repeated Jennifer, laughing. "If they only knew it started with a desperate family in an old trailer. But it really did start that way, Mum, and look how far it's come." "No, honey, it hasn't come as far as it's going. It's come to where it is now because this is going to grow much more." And she was right. In the following years, the Wilson cooperative model was replicated in 12 states. Emily Grace became a national consultant in sustainable rural development. Peter opened the agriculture school he had dreamed of. Haley set up her craft workshop, which now had 50 employees. Michael and Gabriel became veterinarians and created an animal treatment center that served the entire region. The younger children grew up surrounded by opportunities their parents had never imagined. 10 years after the discovery of the maps, Jennifer was sitting on the house porch on a Sunday afternoon when Lily, now 13 years old, approached her. "Mom, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my daughter." "Do you think all of this would have happened if you hadn't found the maps?" Jennifer smiled, the same question the children had been asking since they were little. Lily, the maps gave us an opportunity, but we were the ones who took advantage of the opportunity. If it weren't for the maps, it would have been something else. How can you be so sure? Because I learned that the most important map wasn't hidden in the trailer. It was inside our family's heart. The map that showed when people come together for a just cause, they can change not only their lives but the world around them. Lily thought for a moment. So the paper maps just showed the way. But the real map was our love for each other. Exactly, my clever daughter, Robert approached, hearing the end of the conversation. Jennifer, remember when we thought our life was just about surviving? I remember. It feels like it was in another life. And now? Now I know that our life is about building dreams, building opportunities for other people, building a better world for our children. And do you know what makes me proudest? What? That our children grew up seeing that this is possible. They will teach their children that no dream is impossible when we have the courage to fight. At that moment, all the children gathered on the porch. It was a Sunday tradition, the family conversation in the late afternoon. Everyone, said Emily Grace, I have some news. What news? Asked Jennifer. I received an offer to write a book telling our story. A book? Yes. A publisher from New York wants to publish the story of the family that turned a trailer into a model cooperative. All the children got excited, talking at the same time. Calm down, said Robert. Let's think about this carefully. Dad, it would be a way to inspire other families, argued Peter. And to show that everyone deserves a chance, added Haley. Jennifer became thoughtful. Emily Grace, if you write this book, you need to tell the whole truth. The bad parts, too. The fear, the doubts, the moments we wanted to give up. Why? Because if we only tell the victories, people will think it was easy. And it wasn't. It was the hardest thing we've ever done in our lives. But was it worth it? It was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of despair, because it brought us here. Emily Grace smiled. Then I'll write it, and I'll start with that phrase you always say. What phrase? That it doesn't matter where we come from, it matters where we're going. That's a good phrase to start with, agreed Jennifer. And to end? To end. Jennifer looked at all the children, at her husband, at the house they had built, at the cooperative shining in the distance. To end, I'll tell that we discovered that treasure maps really do exist. Only they don't lead to gold. They lead to something much more precious. To what? Several voices asked together. To the discovery that we are capable of much more than we imagined, and that when a family comes together for love and justice, they can move mountains. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky golden. The Wilson family stood there, on the porch of the house they had built with their own hands, knowing that their story was much more than the recovery of land or the success of a cooperative. It was living proof that every human being deserves dignity, and that this dignity is not given by anyone. It is achieved through hard work, perseverance, and the courage to never accept injustice. And sometimes, the most precious treasures are hidden in the most unlikely places, like ancient maps in a rusty trailer, or like the strength of a family that refused to give up on their dreams. 15 years had passed since that day, when the rusty trailer arrived at the door of the rented house. Jennifer, now with graying hair, walked through the cooperative observing the activity. Hundreds of people worked there, each with their own story, their dreams, their struggles. Emily Grace had become a national reference in cooperativism. Her book about the family had sold over 1 million copies and inspired the creation of similar cooperatives across the country. Peter ran the largest sustainable agriculture school in the region. His methods were studied in universities, and there was a 2-year waiting list to get a spot in the courses. Haley owned a network of craft workshops that employed more than 200 women. Her products were sold even abroad. Michael and Gabriel had become famous veterinarians, specializing in the care of small farm animals. They had a mobile clinic that served cooperatives in 5 states. The children who were small in the trailer were now educated adults, each following their own path, but all connected by the common purpose of helping other families. Even Lily, the youngest, had found her calling. She was studying law and already talking about specializing in agrarian rights to help families in situations similar to what they had been through. "Mrs. Wilson," said a voice behind her. She turned and saw a young woman with 3 small children clinging to her skirt. "Hi, dear. Can I help you with something?" "Are you really Jennifer Wilson, the one who wrote that book?" Jennifer smiled. The book had been published under Emily Grace's name, but everyone knew the stories came from her. "Yes, I am. Why?" The woman hesitated, her eyes welling up. "I read your story, and I came here because I'm in the same situation you were in." "What do you mean?" "I lost my home, my husband is unemployed, the children are in need. I came to ask, I don't know, a chance? A job? Anything?" Jennifer looked at the 3 children. The oldest must have been about 7, the middle one seemed to be 5, the youngest could barely stand. "What's your name?" "Jane. Jane Smith. And your children?" "These are Charles, Mary, and the little one is Rose." "Jane, do you have any experience with rural work?" "No, Mrs. Wilson, but I'm willing to learn. And I really need to give a better life for my children." Jennifer smiled, seeing her own story repeating. "You know what I'm going to do, Jane." "What?" "I'm going to give you more than a job. I'm going to give you a chance to change your life completely." "How?" "The cooperative has a program for families in emergency situations. We provide temporary housing, work, training, and support until the family can get back on their feet." "And does it work?" "We've helped over 1,000 families in the last 10 years, and all of them managed to rebuild their lives." "Why do you do this?" "Because we learned that when life gives you a second chance, you have an obligation to give second chances to other people." Jane began to cry, hugging her children. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you so much." "No need to thank me, dear. You just need to believe that you are capable of much more than you think." That evening, during the family dinner, Jennifer told them about Jane. "She reminded me of us 15 years ago," she said. "Desperate, not knowing what to do, but with the will to fight for her children." "And now she'll have the same chance we had," said Emily Grace. "No," corrected Robert. "She'll have a better chance, because now there's the cooperative to welcome families like hers." "Dad, do you think Uncle George imagined those maps would lead to all this?" asked Peter. "I think he just wanted justice," replied Robert, "but he ended up planting the seed of something much bigger." "It's funny how things connect," reflected Haley. "If he hadn't kept the maps, if you hadn't fought, if we hadn't gone through all that, none of this would be here today," completed Michael, "and hundreds of families wouldn't have had the chance to start over," added Gabriel. Jennifer looked at all her children, now adults, successful, happy. "Do you know what I've learned all these years?" "What?" they asked in chorus. "That the suffering we went through wasn't in vain. It was our preparation to be able to help other people." "How so?" wanted to know Lily. "If we hadn't gone hungry, we wouldn't understand the desperation of those who have nothing to eat. If we hadn't lived in the trailer, we wouldn't know what it's like to not have a decent roof over our heads. If we hadn't been humiliated, we wouldn't understand the importance of treating everyone with dignity." "So suffering was a school?" asked Emily Grace. "It was. A school that taught us to have empathy. And empathy is what drives cooperatives, what builds communities, what changes the world." Robert held his wife's hand. "Jennifer, when we discovered those maps, I thought our problems were solved." "And weren't they?" "No. Our problems were small compared to our mission. We didn't know it, but we weren't just fighting for our family, we were fighting for all the families we would help in the future." "That's beautiful, Dad," said Haley. "It's the truth. Sometimes God, or fate, or whatever, puts challenges in our lives that seem too big for us. But it's because He knows we're capable of carrying a heavier burden than we imagine." The following week, Jane started working at the cooperative. Jennifer made sure to personally accompany her first days. "Mrs. Wilson, can I ask a question?" said Jane at the end of the first week. "Of course. Why do you care so much about people like me?" "Because you're not people like you. You're a mother who wants to give a better life to your children, just like I was, just like all of us are. But you've already achieved everything you wanted. You could simply enjoy your life. Jane, do you think I could enjoy my life knowing there are mothers going through what I went through? I don't know. I couldn't. I'd sleep badly every night knowing I could be helping and I'm not. Is that why the cooperative exists? That's why all of this exists, so that no mother has to humiliate herself asking for a job, so that no child has to go hungry, so that no family has to accept injustices because they have no alternative. Jane got emotional. Mrs. Wilson, I promise I'll work hard, and when my family is doing well, I'll help other families too. I know you will, dear. And do you know how I know? How? Because I recognize the sparkle in your eyes. It's the same sparkle I had when I discovered I could be more than a victim of circumstances. What sparkle is that? The sparkle of hope, mixed with determination. The most powerful combination in the world. 2 years later, Jane had become one of the coordinators of the cooperative. Her daughters were studying at the local school, her husband had found work in construction, and they had their own house built in one of the subdivisions created by the cooperative. Mrs. Wilson, said Jane at a coordination meeting, I have a proposal. What is it? How about we create a specific program for single mothers? I've noticed they have different difficulties than complete families. What kind of difficulties? Childcare during work, professional training adapted to their routines, emotional support. Specific things, Jennifer smiled. Jane, 2 years ago you arrived here not even knowing how to begin. Today you're proposing social programs. Do you know what that means? What? That you've discovered your life's mission, just like I discovered mine 15 years ago. And what is my mission? To be a bridge between despair and hope for other women. The program for single mothers was implemented and became a national reference. Jane started getting invited to give lectures in other cities, telling how she had gone from poverty to becoming a social leader. During one of these lectures, an elderly lady in the audience raised her hand. Ms. Jane, how do you explain that a simple family like the Wilsons managed to create all this? Jane thought about the question. The Wilson family wasn't special for being different. They were special for being like many American families, hardworking, honest, united. The difference is that they refused to accept they weren't entitled to a better life. But many families refuse to accept poverty and still can't change their lives. True. But the Wilson family had 3 rare ingredients: persistence to not give up when everything seemed lost, courage to face people much more powerful than them, and wisdom to understand that individual victory means nothing if the community continues to suffer. Do you think any family can repeat their story? I think any family can write their own story of overcoming. It might not be the same as the Wilsons, but it can be equally transformative. And what's the secret? There is no secret. There is choice. The choice to fight or give up. The choice to dream small or dream big. The choice to hold grudges or transform pain into fuel to help others. When she returned home after the lecture, Jane found Jennifer waiting on the porch. How was the lecture? Asked Jennifer. Good, but it made me think about something. About what? About the responsibility we have. Our story has become an example for so many people that sometimes I'm afraid of disappointing. Jane, you're afraid of the wrong thing. What do you mean? You shouldn't be afraid of disappointing. You should be afraid of stagnating, of stopping growing, of stopping dreaming, of stopping helping. And if one day I can't help anyone else, then you'll teach your children to help, and they'll teach their children, and so on. Does that really work? Look around, Jane. How many people here are children or grandchildren of families that went through the cooperative? Jane looked. There were dozens of young people working in the cooperative, many children of families that had been helped years before. Many. Exactly. Kindness generates kindness. Opportunity generates opportunity. Hope generates hope. And hate generates hate. That too. That's why we choose not to hold grudges against those who harmed us. We choose to transform hurt into motivation to be better. That night, Jane wrote in her diary, "Today I understood that the Wilson family story isn't about a rusty trailer or hidden maps. It's about the decision to believe you deserve something better and fight for it, and about the responsibility to pave the way for those who come after. 20 years had passed since the discovery of the maps. The cooperative was now a globally recognized institution. Delegations from other countries came to learn about the American model of sustainable rural development. Jennifer, at 65, had become an international reference in cooperativism, but she still lived in the same house they had built, drove the same used car, ate at the same table with the family. "Mum," said Emily Grace during a Sunday lunch, "don't you think you've done enough? Don't you want to rest?" Rest from what? From working so much, from worrying about so many people, from carrying so much responsibility. Jennifer smiled. "Daughter, do you think what I do is work?" "Isn't it? For me it's fun, it's pleasure, it's fulfillment. Every morning I wake up eager to see which new family will arrive, which new dream will be born, which transformation will happen. But that's a lot of pressure. The only pressure I feel is from within, from knowing there are still so many people needing help. And when does it stop? It never stops, Emily Grace. Equality, dignity, justice aren't goals you achieve, and that's it. They're directions you follow your whole life." Robert, who was listening to the conversation in silence, spoke up. "Daughter, your mother is right. We didn't do all this to have a comfortable life and forget about the rest of the world. Then why did you do it? To prove it's possible, to be an example, to show that hard-working families can indeed change their reality and even help others change theirs. And you don't feel tired?" "Sometimes," admitted Jennifer. "But then a family like Jane's comes along, or a child like Rose, and all the energy returns." "Rose? Jane's youngest daughter. Last week she told me she wants to be like me when she grows up. Do you know what that means?" "What?" "That the cycle continues, that 20 years from now she'll be helping other children like her, and so on." "Mom, do you think 20 years from now you'll still be working at the cooperative?" "God willing, and if health permits, yes." "And if it doesn't?" "Then you continue. And your children continue. And your grandchildren continue." "Is that a hereditary mission?" "No, it's a hereditary choice. Each generation chooses whether to continue or stop. And if some generation chooses to stop, then it's because that generation didn't need to go through what we went through, and that's good. It would mean we managed to create a world where it's no longer necessary to fight so hard for dignity." Peter, who had been quiet, made an observation. "Mom, have you ever stopped to think about how many lives were changed because of those maps?" "Thousands," replied Jennifer. "Just in our cooperative, over 5,000 families. In the cooperatives created based on our model, another 30,000. And if you consider the children and grandchildren of those families, then the count goes to hundreds of thousands of people who had a better life because one day Uncle George stored some papers in an old trailer." Impressive, huh? What's more impressive is to think about how many maps are hidden out there, how many opportunities for change that people don't see or don't have the courage to seize. How so? Peter, every person has something equivalent to our maps. It could be an undeveloped talent, an idea not put into practice, an injustice not confronted. The difference is who has the courage to act. Haley, who had arrived from the crafts workshop, joined the conversation. "What are you talking about?" "Treasure maps," said Peter, laughing. "Oh, Sunday talk," laughed Haley. "Can I contribute an observation?" "Sure. Today an embroidery order arrived from France. Guess who made it?" "Who?" "3 women who came to the cooperative 5 years ago without even knowing how to sew. Today they're exporting American art to Europe." "And what's your observation? That our maps didn't lead us to a hidden treasure? They led us to discover that we were the treasure." Jennifer fell silent for a moment, moved by the depth of her daughter's observation. "Haley, that's the most beautiful thing I've heard in a long time." "Is it true, Mom?" "It's the absolute truth. We spent years searching for something that was inside us all along, the ability to transform our reality and the reality of other people." "And did Uncle George know that?" "I don't know if he knew, but he intuited that those papers could be important for someone someday, and he saved them, Just like we're saving experiences and knowledge for other people to use? Exactly. Every family we help is saving strength and wisdom to help others. It's an endless cycle of multiplying blessings. On that late afternoon, as the family lingered in conversation on the porch, a question hung in the air. What would be the next chapter of this story? The answer came the following week. The federal government invited the cooperative to replicate the model nationwide, creating a network of family cooperatives in every state. "Mom," said Emily Grace, bringing the proposal. "This would mean coordinating thousands of cooperatives, helping millions of families." "And would it mean moving to Washington, D.C.?" asked Jennifer Wilson. "Not necessarily. We can keep the headquarters here and set up regional offices." "And you think we should accept?" "I don't know," said Robert. "It's a huge responsibility." "Dad, with great opportunities come great responsibilities," quoted Peter. "We can't waste the chance to multiply our experience 1,000-fold. "But we also can't lose our essence," pondered Haley. "If we grow too fast, we could become a cold, bureaucratic institution." "So how do we do it?" asked Michael. "By establishing clear principles from the start," suggested Gabriel. "Every cooperative in the network has to function like a family, not a company." "And how do we ensure that?" "By visiting all of them, training the coordinators, keeping close contact," said Emily Grace. Jennifer Wilson listened to all the arguments in silence. "I'm going to tell you a story," she said finally. Everyone drew closer, knowing that their mother's stories always carried an important lesson. "When I was a child, my grandmother planted a small mango tree in the backyard. It was a fragile tree that needed constant care. My grandmother died when the tree was still small." "And then?" asked Lily. "My mother kept caring for it. And then I did. And then you did. Today, 40 years later, that tree feeds half the neighborhood. There are mangoes for everyone." "What's the lesson?" "The lesson is that some things are planted for future generations, not for immediate results. Our cooperative is the same. It's not our personal project, it's a seed we planted for America's future." "So, should we accept the proposal?" "We should accept it with one condition. Every cooperative in the network must be planted and cared for as if it were meant to last 100 years. It can't be a government project that changes with elections." "How do we ensure that?" "By doing what our grandmother did with the mango tree. Teaching each family to care for their own cooperative, so that when we're no longer here, they keep growing and bearing fruit." The proposal was accepted. Over the next 5 years, the national network of family cooperatives grew to 400 units, spread across the entire country. Jennifer Wilson traveled constantly, visiting new cooperatives, training coordinators, monitoring results. On every visit, she saw her own story repeating: desperate families finding hope, hungry children discovering dignity, impossible dreams becoming reality. "Mrs. Wilson," said a coordinator at a cooperative in the Southeast, "how do you have the energy to do all this at 70 years old?" "My dear, every family you help gives me energy to keep going. It's as if I'm a battery that charges with gratitude instead of electricity. Isn't it tiring to travel so much? You know what would be tiring? Staying home knowing there are families going through what I went through and doing nothing to help. Are you afraid of anything?" "I am." "Of what?" "Of dying before seeing all American families with dignity. And if that happens, then I trust you to continue the work, and your children, and your grandchildren." During one of these trips, Jennifer Wilson had a health issue and had to be hospitalized. The news spread quickly through the cooperative network, and hundreds of caring messages arrived at the hospital. "Mom," said Emily Grace, reading some of the messages, "listen to this one. Mrs. Jennifer Wilson, you changed our lives. Before the cooperative came, my children went to bed hungry. Today they're in college. Thank you for not giving up on your dreams, because that allowed us to achieve ours." "And this one," Peter continued. "Mrs. Jennifer Wilson, when I was a child, I lived in a slum and thought I'd die there. Today I'm a coordinator at a cooperative and help other families escape poverty. All because you proved it's possible." "And there's one more," said Haley. "Mrs. Jennifer Wilson, my grandmother always said angels exist. I didn't believe it until I met you." Jennifer listened with tears in her eyes. "Do you know what moves me most about these messages?" she said. "What?" asked her children. "It's not the affection for me. It's knowing that each of these people will do the same for other families, that the cycle of kindness will never stop." "Mom, the doctor said you need to slow down," said Robert. "Robert, I'm 70 years old. If I were to slow down, when would be the time to speed up? But you need to take care of yourself." "I take care of myself by helping people. That's what keeps me alive and with purpose. And if your health can't handle it, then you continue. Simple as that." "Mom, sometimes it seems like you don't care about your own life." "Peter, I care deeply about my life, but I've discovered my life isn't just mine. It belongs to all the families who have been and will be helped because of the choices we make today." A nurse entered the room to check Jennifer's vital signs. "Are you the famous Jennifer Wilson?" she asked. "Not famous. Just a mother who was lucky to find some old maps," replied Jennifer. "My family was helped by the cooperative in Maine 3 years ago," said the nurse. "Today my children are studying. We have our own home, a dignified life." "That's wonderful, dear. And what's your name?" "Faith. Faith Oliver." "Faith, can I ask you a favor?" "Of course. When your children grow up, tell them this story. Not just mine, but yours too, so they know transformation is possible." "I'll definitely tell them, and I'll teach them to help other families too." "Perfect. That way the cycle continues." After being discharged from the hospital, Jennifer decided to write her memoirs. Not a commercial book, but a manual for future generations of cooperative coordinators. "Mum, why not a regular book?" asked Emily Grace. "It could reach more people." "Because with regular books, people read and forget. With manuals, people study and apply." "And what would the content be?" "Everything. How to identify families who truly want to change their lives, how to handle community resistance, how to keep the cooperative united when conflicts arise, how to grow without losing the essence. And the most important part, how to teach people to fish instead of giving them the fish." The manual was written over 2 years, with contributions from coordinators of all the network's cooperatives. It became required reading in social development and cooperative courses at various universities. During the manual's launch, Jennifer gave a speech considered one of her best. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to an audience of over 1,000 people, 25 years ago I was a desperate mother living in a rusty trailer. Today I'm here launching a manual about cooperatives. This didn't happen by magic. It happened because I learned 3 fundamental lessons. First, problems exist to be solved, not to be accepted. Second, a united family is invincible, but a united family that helps other families is transformative. Third, the future isn't something that happens to us. It's something we build for our children. This manual isn't about cooperatives, it's about hope. Hope that every American family can write their own story of overcoming. Hope that there is no destiny that cannot be changed with work and determination. Hope that a better country is possible when ordinary people do extraordinary things. When we found those maps in the trailer, we thought we had discovered a treasure. Today, I know the treasure wasn't in the papers. It was in our decision to fight. And this treasure, unlike gold that runs out, only grows when it is shared. The audience rose in a 5-minute standing ovation. But for Jennifer, the most important applause came later, when a 20-year-old young woman approached her. "Mrs. Wilson, may I speak with you?" "Of course, my dear. My name is Rose. Rose Smith." Jennifer looked at her carefully. The name was familiar. "Rose, aren't you Jane's daughter?" "Yes, I am," said the young woman, smiling. "Do you remember me?" "I remember the little girl who couldn't even stand on her own when your mother arrived at the cooperative." "That's right. Today I'm 20 years old. I have a degree in business administration, and I want to work at the cooperative." "That's wonderful, Rose. And your mother?" "My mother is doing well. She's a regional coordinator now. She oversees 15 cooperatives." "And what do you want to do at the cooperative?" "I want to create a program for young children from assisted families, so that they don't feel like just beneficiaries, but protagonists of their own stories." Jennifer was moved. "Rose, do you know what this means to me?" What? You are living proof that it was all worth it. You represent the second generation of transformation, and your children will be the third generation. Mrs. Wilson, can I tell you something? Of course. When I was little, my mother used to tell me your story every night before bed. Not as a fairy tale, but as an example that it was possible to dream and achieve. And did it work? It worked. I grew up knowing I could be anything I wanted, and I chose to be like you. Like how? Someone who uses their own transformation to transform other people's lives. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this emotional journey. Do you believe the Wilson family's persistence was the key to the transformation? Leave your comment sharing which part moved you the most, and if you know any family that went through something similar. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.